Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome once again to Honest HR Nitrous. I'm Bill, the company's expert. Thank you for joining me today. This is the live stream we do a couple of times weekly where we talk about careers, job search, and not just job search, but the gritty reality of job search, not the theory about how it should go, the reality, complete with incompetent recruiters, rude hiring managers, the confusion, the psychological effect of job searching in this modern sort of world, what you can do about it, how to work on it. And this is primarily a Q&A session, so I don't have a big monologue of stuff to say. I'm just responding to your questions. So if you can see me, you should see a chat box or a chat field nearby. Get in the chat. Let me know what you're wondering about, what you're struggling with. And I will do my best to try and help you out, answer your questions. The title of today's episode is Getting Interviews, but Never Any Job Offers. Let's talk. This is actually part 2 in a sort of a very loose mini-series I'm doing. The first episode of this a couple of days ago was we were talking about not being able to get an interview. So a problem with your applications if you are applying for posted jobs. Now we're moving on to the next problem people have is you can get interviews, but you can't pass the interviews. You're not getting an offer at the end of it. So we're going to talk about that today. I see there's already questions rolling in. I'm going to get to your questions, but I just want to give out some blanket advice. If you are in this situation, if you're getting interviews, but you can't seem to pass the interviews so that you get a job offer, here's what I recommend. Number 1, make sure that you're doing a 2-stage preparation process, okay? Number 1, first of all, do work solo. Go by yourself and learn the answers to standard job interview questions, learn the answers to behavioral questions, memorize them, practice them by yourself so that you are able to answer these questions, okay? That's the first stage or the first phase of preparation. Then, the second stage of 2 is something that a lot of people overlook, but it's extremely important. Go interview with someone else. So grab a friend or family member, get them to help you out, get them to be the job interviewer, do a pretend job interview where they ask you questions. They can create the questions or you can give them a list of questions, whatever. And then you rehearse this. You rehearse giving these answers and answering the questions in a situation that simulates a real job interview. If it feels weird and a little awkward, that's good because that's simulating the conditions under which you're going to be doing real job interviews. So people are never instantly good at job interviews. I don't care who you are. You're not instantly good without ever having practiced or made a whole bunch of rookie mistakes. You get good by practice. Practice makes perfect. So job interviews are the same as every other thing. Practice makes perfect. So work on your answers, memorize them, and then rehearse doing job interviews with a friend or family member. I recommend 3 to 4 mock interviews per day for over about 10 days. And you will know these questions inside out. You will, they'll be burned into your mind. You will go down to an interview. Even if you feel outside of your comfort zone, you will remember what to say and you will take it all in your stride. And when you see that they are asking you the same questions essentially that you anticipated and you knock it out of the park, that's when the confidence will come. So that would be my blanket advice to anyone wanting to work on their interviewing skills. Let's get over to you guys because that's the end of my monologue. It's all Q&A from now on. Benito Jr. is here. Benito says, how do you view an applicant who's a job hopper, 5 jobs in 3 years? Well, it depends on your definition of job hopper. That is not a job hopper. A job hopper would be somebody that, hops every 3 months, and 5 jobs in 3 years doesn't qualify. You're at each job for 9 months, something like that on average. That doesn't fit within the definition anymore. Maybe 10 years ago, 20 years ago, that would have maybe raised some red flags, but not in this day and age, not since COVID. It's a lot more common to, and it's following a general trend, which is every decade, right? people are staying at each job for less time on average. Okay, so people are moving around more and more often, right? That's been the general trend since the 1950s. Okay, and we are continuing that trend. It's just going on a linear trajectory. It's a testament to how crappy a lot of jobs actually are, and it's a reaction to recruitment and selection and working conditions. So, that's no longer qualifying as a job hopper. Okay. Now, what you can do is if there is one job on there that you've had 5 jobs in 3 years, if there is one that doesn't directly relate to the job you're applying for, you might want to consider taking it off your resume if it doesn't add any value. You know what I mean? Like, do you need to list all 5 in the last 3 years? Maybe 1 or 2 of them aren't relevant. So you can maybe get away with just putting the year in there or something and not drawing attention to it. It's up to you. It's up to you how you do that. But no, I don't see that as a red flag. I don't think a lot of people would necessarily see that as a red flag either. Bartek says, I come from the construction industry. I started as an apprentice, carpenter, foreman, started my own business. Unfortunately, after 5 years, shutting down, looking for a permanent role as manager. Recruiters or companies itself seems to have allergy on word director. In my employment experience, giving me stupid comments. Should I delete that part, last 5 years, and put lies instead? What? Don't put lies. That's not usually a winning strategy one way or another. I don't understand what you mean, having an allergy on the word director. Like, if you're looking for a manager position, you can. Now, unfortunately, in almost every other industry, doing entrepreneurial type stuff, like having your own business, is considered like a bad thing. Recruiters don't want to hire you if you've been on your own, because they make the assumption that, number one, you'd rather be on your own given the chance. So the first chance you get, you're gonna jump ship with them when you're gonna do your own company, right? Number two, they don't see it as a good thing. You and I both know it's an awesome thing, right? And it shows a lot of value and a lot of talent and a lot of ability. We all know this. Recruiters don't see it that way. They're not trained to see it that way. They see it as a sign of someone who can't work within their organization, within their system, so they have to go outside of the system to survive. We all know that that's crap, but that's what they think. So as a result, generally speaking, for pretty much almost every other industry, you would not mention the fact that you are on your own. Construction is a little bit different. I'm not an expert on the construction industry, and in any case, it varies depending on what region you're in. But obviously, it's a lot more common in the construction business. I don't think there's necessarily an issue with mentioning it. But, if you really wanted to find out what is the right answer for like how you should phrase the fact that you had your own business doing that, you could talk to other people in the construction industry that have done that. This is something I say on a regular basis. If you really wanted to know how to do that and you didn't know anyone in real life, you could find them on LinkedIn. You do a people search for people that have been in the role that you're looking for, right? Like a manager, whatever type of manager it is in the construction business, whether you're a general or you're a contract, like your project manager, whatever, or whatever the title is. If it's director, I'm not sure, whatever it is you're going for. Do a people search, confine it to your own region, and then look for the term director, set it to the construction business, and then also look for self-employed, right? So you do director and self-employed. And what it's going to do is it's going to return a bunch of individuals in your region in the construction business that have been self-employed at some point and also have worked as a director in some capacity. So look at their profiles. And you have the opportunity of reaching out, giving them a phone call, see if you could ask them that question. How do I phrase this if I'm trying to get employed at a company and I've had my own business? What did you do? You could do it that way, or you could just see their trajectory, see like what they had And if you have what they have, then that kind of validates that you're certainly qualified in the eyes of the large construction company to be in the director role. Does that make sense? It's more practical if you just know people. In the construction industry in general, people know each other. It's just more of a networking kind of thing going on. So you could ask others who have made that same jump how they phrased it. You know what I mean? Hopefully that's somewhat helpful. I'm not in construction. You would get the answers for how it works in that industry in your region by talking to people in your industry in your region. And they can tell you exactly what you need to do and how you need to present yourself, what to mention, what not to mention. That would probably be pretty useful if you can talk to these people. Brett says, how about 7 years with a publicly traded company and 7 years in aftermarket mechanic, and I got a bachelor recently to get above paper sealing for manager, have been foreman before, recommend. Okay. No, I don't really have any recommendations. That's too general to really say what to do. I mean, I know you're a mechanic with a bachelor degree in a publicly traded company. I mean, that really doesn't narrow down very precise strategy. Depends what you're going for. All I would say is if you're going for jobs in the posted job market, okay, you got to dance to their tune. You got to play by their rules. If they want you to do it a certain way, then do it. If you're going through networking, which everybody should wise up to the world of networking, because that's how most people get hired, right? Don't take my word for it. If this is shocking, go do your own research. Tune into that, okay? In which case you'd want to talk directly to either the managers, like the manager of managers, the second level manager, who hires first level managers, if that's what you're going for, right? Or executives, right? And then you sell yourself on your attitude, your initiative, the fact that you're asking very intelligent questions and you're tuned in. That's just a general rule for this stuff. Brett says, have associates in automotive technology and associates in business admin and bachelors in management, none will call back. So when you say you have associates, are you talking about coworkers? Or are you talking about like connections? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what situation you're in. I don't know how it works in that industry. So sorry. I can't, like, any advice I would give would be like so general as to be useless for you specifically. It's just not possible to say that stuff. You get the specific knowledge by talking to people in your industry, right? Who have either done what you're wanting to do or are in a position to hire you, like on the spot, right? And that means people above you, well above you, right? You don't talk to the people at the bottom, they're useless. You don't talk to the people at the middle, they're too busy. You talk to the people at the top. So that's executives for sure, and possibly some slightly lower level hiring managers, people that would hire someone like you to work in their department or in their group, right? So those are the people that have the power to hire you on the spot. I have a very specific way that I recommend that people reach out to those people, how you discover them and reach out to them. Instead of me trying to explain it at length for half an hour right now, I put it into a couple of videos. But the one that you should check out is linked in the description box of this live stream. It's called How Successful People Get Jobs, okay? It involves Google Maps and LinkedIn to discover these people, to reach out to them, and they're the ones that can hire you. And that you're doing direct outreach to tap the hidden job market. All these people are hiring all the time. The vast majority of the jobs are not posted because they don't need to be posted, because they have no problems filling these positions, right? They don't need the resumes of 1,000 strangers to be able to fill these positions. They already have lots of people lined up for them. You can be that person, okay? Learn how to tap the hidden job market. You can start by checking out that video. So in the description box, it's called How Successful People Get Jobs. Check that out. That may help you. Green Drawn says, hello, you look good. Well, thank you very much. I have been doing several facial treatments and a weight loss program, as you can tell from my physique. David says, in the interview, the hiring manager indirectly asked about my previous role, which I didn't badmouth, but I feel that he interpreted as I liked my previous role and probably I got fired, which I didn't. Okay. I guess we'll be hearing the second half of that story in a little bit. Yeah, listen, if the boss feels that you liked your previous role, that's a good thing. That's not a liability in any way. If they believe that you were fired when you weren't, obviously you want to try and set them straight on that, and just say, I feel like I've been misconstrued. I feel like I gave the impression that I was fired. Just so you're aware, I was not fired. I actually left on very good terms, and I left voluntarily, just so that we're clear about this, Okay, Brett is continuing. Brett says, same company, 7 years, another 4 years, GM back at the dealership. Yes, you at speaking about the manager over the repair side, part south. Degree, thanks for... Okay. Hopefully that helps somewhat, Brett. Nita says, last two interviews, the interviewers were 20 minutes late. Yeah, that does not surprise me. Wanted to skip interview. Okay, they wanted to skip the interview. First interviewer apologized. The second one was upset because I texted her just to make sure the interview was still a go. Yeah, well, that's an example of a prize jackass. Like if you send a text saying like, hello, I just wanted to confirm that the meeting is still on for today, especially when they're 20 minutes late or they turn out to be 20 minutes late. What can I say? I mean, you have an unprofessional person that's, if they bit your head off because of that, or they were upset because you did that, they're not justified in being upset. That's a perfectly innocuous professional thing, Now, if you follow it up like 25 times to say, is the meeting still on? Is the meeting still on? Like, okay, there, fair enough, but still. No, that's just typical example of some of the completely unprofessional behavior that is commonplace in recruitment and selection. As I've said many times, these people are representing their organization. And it strikes, it touches a nerve with me because I was an executive. If you want to be an executive, generally speaking, one of the things you have to do is, you are representing your organization. So you have to have like a game face on all the time. You can't get upset. You can't start yelling at people. You can't act all offended or whatever, or, have an attitude. You're representing your organization. You always have to respond appropriately, politely, professionally, regardless of the provocation, regardless of the situation. That's just what is expected for someone in those roles. Why is it expected? It's because if you don't do that, there are major consequences. You accidentally piss off potential customers, potential partners, potential regulators, potential suppliers. You know what I mean? Like, all kinds of bad things happen, right? When you just... It's almost like walking into a crowd and starting a fight with strangers. Like, it's just a bad idea. Your days are numbered if you do that. It's only a matter of time before that really comes back to bite you. It's the same thing. If you start getting upset at people who are members of the public, and that's what candidates are, right? They are members of the public, and you are your organization's representative in their dealings with you. You know what I mean? It's like you can really rub people the wrong way in such a way that it comes back and bites the organization. I've seen that. Famously, I used to know one person, like this is like 20 years ago, they had a very bad experience in a job interview. And I don't know what went down. I mean, they described it to me, and it was something along those lines where the person had been very rude to them, very disrespectful to them, and they carried this around. And because we were all working in the same industry as the company that did this to this individual, they really had a chip on their shoulder and a hatred for that company. And they made it their business to actively compete against that company and do everything in their power to put them out of business. And they were somewhat effective in later years. They were like a higher level manager, and they had a bit of pull and they had a bit of influence. And it's like, that was a needless situation where a company, like, it created an enemy for absolutely no reason. You know what I mean? In like a local industry. It's just a stupid idea, but this is what we see. Now back to Nita here. If you arrive late to an interview, then how would they view me? Unprofessional when interviewers are late like that and don't apologize. Well, I think you know the answer to that. You see your reaction to them being late. It's a sign of disrespect, or it can be interpreted as a sign of disrespect. In particular, in my experience, technical people or introverted people, they tend to interpret that event to mean that. If we agree on a time and I show up and you wander in half an hour later, I regard that as some kind of personal slight. You're signaling to me that I'm just not important enough for you to be punctual, right? You're not prioritizing this meeting. It doesn't mean much to you. And you think that you can behave this way and I'll be fine with it, is the presumption. Now, all of that is an interpretation, of course. There's no direct evidence that that's how it's meant, but people can often interpret it that way, right? And they feel disrespected, they feel slighted, or even insulted. And so I think the answer to that question. If you were to appear late, yes, you're going to convey all that stuff to them. You're also going to pretty much eliminate your chances of them picking you. That's the likely outcome of that. So obviously you wouldn't do it. But I feel for you, Nita. There's a lot of jackass recruiters out there. There's a lot of great ones, but there's a hell of a lot of bad ones that are disrespectful, rude, incompetent, and it's the sort of opposite of hospitality when you go and meet these people. You know what I mean? Especially considering that when people go to job interviews, they're at like a low point in their life. They're probably between jobs. And as a result, they may be feeling pretty fragile, pretty low, pretty vulnerable. And the last thing you need when you feel like that is to encounter some arrogant prick that sort of gets off on, having you be coming to them for a favor, or it feels like a favor. You want something from them. And they love that sense of importance and power, So don't worry, Nita, chin up. You encounter these jerks one day, you encounter some good people the next day. Just stay in the game. Don't worry, this will eventually come back to bite them. Maybe soon, maybe later, but they will feel the effect of it. Alex says, is it advisable to do extra hours in a job? It depends, Alex. It totally depends. It can be, but not necessarily. It depends on the situation. It's bad if one doesn't want to do extra hours. Once again, it depends. It depends what the culture is. Culture simply means the way they do things there, right? So they may have certain expectations, right? In some places, it's conceivable that when the boss asks you if you want to put in some extra hours, it really means that they're expecting you. They're telling you to do it. And if you don't do it, then they interpret that as signaling a bunch of negative things, right? Whether it does or it doesn't, they interpret it that way, right? So that is a thing that has been known. But is that always the case? Absolutely not. It depends on what the culture is and if you're working at a good place or a bad place. That's really what it comes down to. Now listen, the flip side, okay? Like I've been that employee. I've also been the boss, and I've also owned the company, right? So the flip side of this is when you're in business, it isn't always super predictable. And, you need to do a bit of load balancing. Some months are like dead, and other months it's like a frenzy of activity. You know what I mean? You would love to be able to load balance that, spread out the work, but sometimes it's just not possible, right? And the problem is that if you have a bunch of workers, you have a workforce, and you're the boss, and you say like, listen, guys, and girls and guys, listen, we have a lot of work to do this month. We have a lot of jobs coming in. We need to get these jobs done because we don't want to send a message to these customers that, when they order something with us, we can't deliver. I mean, that'll dry up a lot of future business for us if we don't get these orders out. So I'm asking for your help. I know that, there's only X number of you, and we can only do a certain amount of work during regular hours. But I'm asking for your help to get us through this crunch period. If everyone could please put in a little overtime, if that's possible for you, I'm prepared to make it worth your while, and I'll pay you for it, like a premium to do this. But if you could try and help me out, then it would be better for all of us. Like if your boss is coming to you with that kind of message and saying like, look, this is the deal, can you help us out? I think most people, and I've seen that most people, will understand that and will be able to help, and it's kind of a mutually beneficial thing, right? But if you work in a larger business where it's much more corporate, much more formal, they won't say any of that. They'll do it in a very bureaucratic, formal way that feels very cold, and it's the same situation. It's just that the communication is nowhere near as good, and that's really what's going on behind the scenes, but it's not being communicated very well. So when you don't work overtime when they ask, the management feels like, oh, well, I see now that we need your help, you're not there for us. So, hey, what goes around comes around. If there's going to be layoffs, then I don't think you're going to be the one we protect, you know what I mean? So you never really know. It could be a situation like that. In those situations, if you can do it, I'd say do it. And if you have a reasonable boss or a reasonable management team, there can be a payoff. Like if you are sick one day and you call in sick and you're afraid that your boss might get upset, what I've observed famously, is that the tit for tat thing where, if you helped out the management in the crunch time, they'll give you an easy time for that. What I've observed, I famously saw this when I went to a small company for the first time. I saw a worker that did this. They worked overtime, they helped the boss out, and then the next day or something, a different worker called in sick, and the boss took the call, and the worker said, I'm sick, I can't come in. The boss said, no problem. Take all the time you need. Come in when you're ready. It's all good. They treat you like a human being. So that was amazing to me. I hadn't seen management be that reasonable, and I also hadn't seen workers respond as well as they did and help out, the management of the company. So if you're lucky enough to be in a situation like that, then obviously you would try and work extra, right? If you can. If you keep giving and giving and it's never given back, then I can understand people not wanting to do it. But if you don't do it, there could be consequences. So it really depends on your situation. David says, I felt telling good things about your previous role shows liability since the hiring manager might feel that the applicant is more interested in the previous role. Yeah, listen, David, look, that is like a double bluff, right? The conventional wisdom is that if you are a worker who likes working and you got along with your last boss very well and you had no issues with your last company, that's a good thing. You can diffuse that by saying something along the lines of, listen, I thought my boss was great, the company was great, the nature of the work was great. I really had no issues with it, and they seemed to really value me. The only issue was that there were no opportunities for advancement. And, I'm still relatively young, and I would like to shoot for more. I'm ready to do more than this job that I'd been in for quite a few years, and although it was a really good situation for me, I'm just ready to do more, and I'm ready to challenge myself by taking on a sort of higher level work. And unfortunately, they just had no opportunities there. So that's what brings me here, You know what I mean? Like I couldn't imagine anything wrong with somebody saying that. If they have a problem with that, then they've got something wrong with them. You know what I mean? But I wouldn't second guess yourself on that. You might have to just explain a little and say, like, well, if you liked it so much, why are you leaving? Like, you might have to explain that, but there shouldn't be any issues in saying that. Brett says, thanks for the video. Have enjoyed the others you've made. Keep up. Well, thank you, Brett. That's very nice of you to say, and I'm glad that it's at least somewhat useful. Saku says, oh God, don't come in 30 minutes later. Yeah. If you're 30 minutes late, make it up to them before being told to. Yeah. Look, the conventional wisdom is if you're running late, hey, sometimes, despite our best efforts, stuff happens, right? Life gets in the way. As soon as you're going to be late, like send them a message, like send them a text or an email or something like preferably a phone call. If you can't do that, then at least a text, right? And just say, I'm terribly sorry. I've been unexpectedly detained. It's a semi-emergency. I'm handling it, but I will be there ETA this time. I apologize for the inconvenience. Something like that. That's all you can do. Alex says, my impression is that even if someone does extra hours, they could still fire people. Either normal hours or extra, they can still fire. Absolutely. Employers can hire who they want. They can also terminate them whenever they want, for whatever reason they want, assuming it complies with local labor laws and employment standards, right? You know what I mean? That's the reality. They have those rights. You have rights too. You can quit whenever you want. You can say, you know what? Screw you. This job sucks. I'm out of here. You can do that, assuming you conform to local labor laws. You give them like notice or, whatever, right? Everybody's got their rights here, And the reality is that beyond this exchange that you have with them, where you give them time and they give you money, you have no loyalty to them. You're not obligated to them. They don't have the right to dictate your life or treat you like a slave. It's like, and for that reason, I recommend that everybody, as much as this is practical, always be looking. Don't just do the thing where like you get a job, so you stop being connected at all to what opportunities are around you. Always be looking, either actively or inactively, always be kind of tuned in to what's going on around you for your own good. Employers are not loyal to you. They never have been. You know what I mean? Don't delude yourself into thinking that they have some loyalty to you. They don't. That's not how businesses work. They don't have any obligation to their workers other than conforming with the law of the land, right? You know what I mean? They have all kinds of obligations to their owners and shareholders and directors and all this kind of stuff, but they have no loyalty to employees. Employees are just an expense to them. So the reality is that, you shouldn't give your loyalty to any of these entities, because they're not looking out for you. They're looking out for themselves, and they're willing to have an arrangement with you as long as it makes sense to them, right? They're willing to have an arrangement with you under conditions that make sense to them, but that's it. You can go your own way, and you should. Always look out for yourself first. If some employer is just, they're doing their own thing and it no longer really makes sense for you, it's really going in that direction, start looking for what else is out there. There's other things out there. There always has been, there always will be. Most jobs are not posted. They're in the hidden job market. You access those by reaching out to organizations, or any other form of networking. You know what I mean? Always be looking out for yourself. And that's what gives you success. Yeah. So based on that, knowing that reality, then you decide like, okay, my employer has asked me to do this, should I do it? Right? Like decisions like that, you make your own decisions. And it's going to be some form of compromise between what's locally optimal for you now versus, maybe investing in the relationship going forward. You want to be perceived as like the really loyal employee that always is willing to help. Therefore, you're hoping, there's no guarantees, but you're hoping that will be rewarded. Sometimes it will be, sometimes it won't. There's no way of knowing. It's risk. It's like making an investment in any other form. There's risk involved. Maybe it'll pay off, maybe it won't. There's no guarantees. You take your best guess, and you proceed accordingly. Ziggy101 says, do you think you should believe in economic generalizations? There are no high-paying jobs due to the economy. Well, there are a lot of high-paying jobs. Maybe they're not being publicized. That's usually how it goes. As I've said several times today already, the best jobs are in the hidden job market. You access those through things like networking. All the jobs you see posted publicly, that's something like 20% of all the jobs that are actually out there. Right? There's many more out there that you could get. It's just that you don't discover them that way. Right? Now, if this is like a shock to you or you don't believe me or whatever, hey, whatever, don't take my word for any of this. Go do your own research. Okay? Learn about the hidden job market. Learn about how you tap it, how you access it. That's what people generally end up doing for the later stages of their career. It's more common when you're starting out, you're getting your first one or two jobs, you do it in the posted market. That's kind of the default thing. The problem is that there's a lot of problems with the posted job market. There's fake jobs. It's all the crappy jobs. The reason they're posting it publicly is because, they don't know anyone that would want to do it, and there's a reason why, it's maybe not that great, so learn about that stuff. Like if I could have one message to the world, to job seekers, it would be to tune into the hidden job market. There's very few people talking about it because, first of all, who talks about hiring? Recruiters. And it's a conflict of interest for a recruiter to tell you, oh, you don't need to go through a recruiter to get a job. When everyone can easily look up the fact that, yes, most people get hired not through recruiters, So tune into this stuff. There are a lot of high-paying jobs out there. There's a lot of people gainfully employed. There's a lot of safe jobs out there, It's just that you're not hearing about them because it's not newsworthy. And, for a bunch of other reasons too. Idaho Joe says, your tips helped me get a job at a hospital working for a good boss. Right on. Congratulations. I take it you're in America. Good stuff. Bartek says, I found the best way to make up for being late is to offer them coffee. I simply ask what they like and get a croissant as an extra gesture. Okay. Hey, that's interesting. I've never heard of that, but it seems like it could make sense. Do you think I should believe in economic generalizations? There are no high-paying jobs due to the economy. I don't think you should believe in generalizations, period. I mean, look, generalizations have a purpose, why we generalize things. But when it comes to specific actions, usually you get down into details, so you'd have to go beyond generalizations. For example, maybe some industries are booming right now. Maybe others are kind of just sort of stagnant. They're staying the same. Maybe others are declining, right? A lot of industries have like a boom bust cycle thing, like a cyclical thing that just goes all at different periods, right? You know what I mean? even in the declining phase, they're still hiring. You know what I mean? Are they hiring as much? Of course not, but they're still hiring, right? Now, if you just followed general trends, you would not even bother to look in that industry because you would just conclude, oh, it's not worth my time, right? You know, and that may not necessarily be true. You know what I'm saying? Depending on details, right? What maybe has not been part of the equation is that you actually know a lot of people in that industry, you know? So, okay, in general, the industry is entering a decline cycle, like a bust cycle, but they're still hiring, they're still scrambling to do things. And, you know, people are still retiring and like all the rest of it. And, you know what I mean? You happen to know several people. Maybe you have an advantage to get hired in a declining industry during the bust cycle. You know what I mean? It happens. You know, should you just discount that possibility and not even try? That would be a mistake. So it really depends. It depends on details. Like, for example, let's say you worked in sales and you were a sales manager. What do a lot of sales managers do? Well, what they do is they analyze sales and they look for like, okay, of all the sales we're making, let's look at number of sales per city. Let's look at number of sales per product. Let's look at number of sales per product per city. Then let's look at the size of the potential market in that city. Let's look at how much sales we've made per the size of the market in a city. Let's look at the size of the market. Let's look at the amount of sales per the size of the market for each product in every city. You know, and it's all about ratios. And they go, okay, well, we seem to have an untapped potential here because the market is big, but we haven't spent much money trying to sell things in that market. But yet it's shown that this product is kind of a hit. And it shows that, you know, if we did promote that market in this city, then we could make a lot of sales very efficiently, right? So it's all about ratios. And all of that is based on details, right? There are some general trends, but you're going down into the details and you're looking at like, you know, where the real opportunities are, right? That's what sales managers do. Okay. So, you know what I mean? Like if you were to look at a job search like that and say, okay, I could do stuff with direct outreach. I could do stuff with job applications. You know, I could look here. I could look here. There's a couple of different jobs I might be able to get. Let's look at both of those. Let's look at the prospects. Let's look at where these industries are, if they're growing or they're declining, right? And you could do all that type of thing and say like, well, it seems to make sense for me to look here and to do it over networking because there's some real opportunities. This industry is growing, but yet I haven't really looked there, but yet I also know a lot of former coworkers and stuff that are in there, in that industry. You know, maybe I should focus my efforts there, right? And maybe some of those conclusions might go against general trends, right? So generalizations have their role, but if you just limit your thinking at that, you can be missing out. Twinkle Star says, got interviewed by bank manager, sent thank you the next day, did follow up after 2 weeks, said still doing interviews, 1.5 months, no response, met her again randomly in person, but didn't follow up anymore. Yeah, that's pretty much a no. You know, I mean, listen, like I always say, look, do your best. You did all the right things. Presumably you tried your best at the interview. You did send a thank you note. That's good. And you did follow up. Like that's good. Okay. You're doing everything right. Now, if they're doing their own thing, either they're completely incompetent and they're still actually interviewing people, or they've decided to move on, which is far more likely. Hey, that's fine. You know, you did everything right. Now move on. Okay. It's not that you messed up in any way. It's not that you're no good and you have no value. It's just that these people are off doing their own thing. They're looking for something very specific. For whatever retarded reason, they've got it into their head that, you know, they're looking for something other than you or whatever. That's what it certainly seems like. Hey, whatever, all the more power to them. You know, let's see how well that works out for them. But in the meantime, you're moving forward. Look forward. Think about what new opportunities you can drum up. As soon as you finish an interview, as soon as you finish a follow-up or a thank you note, immediately think, okay, right, what other opportunities can I generate for myself here? What other interviews can I get? I'm looking forward. And the more of those you get, the higher the likelihood that you'll be hired sooner, right? So you never know what these people are doing. Don't try and figure it out. Just move on. That's what you have control over, and that's what's going to get you places. Don't feel too bad about it. Internet Vibe says, do you think managers mostly go with the more experienced person from final interviews? No. For myself, I know that I beat out more experienced people for a couple of management jobs that I got in my life. I know that for a fact. I know it because I saw all the files on the hiring of me after the fact that I got hired, and I saw who I was going up against, and it's like, yeah, they had a lot more experience than me, but they chose me over them in that instance. And I can only guess really on how they do it. Maybe they thought like I had more energy, or maybe they thought I was, open-minded more and not as stuck in my previous ways, or I had new ideas, or I had a different personality. I obviously had something that trumped their greater number of years of experience in doing certain things. The other thing is that years of experience up to a point are a crock. We all know this. If you've been in a job 13 years and someone else has been in a job 15 years, are they automatically better than you? Of course not. That's idiotic. Now, if you have 2 weeks experience and they have 10 years experience, then there's a good chance that they would be a safer choice, because them having done the job for 10 years, that signals that they seem to be suited to it. They haven't gone insane and quit because they couldn't handle it, right? Whereas you only have 2 weeks of experience, so maybe you could not be suited to this. Maybe it's too much for you and you will quit out of sheer stress. Show me the evidence that that's not going to happen. You know what I mean? So years of experience are a crock. They're not they do carry some weight, but they don't have nearly the importance that a lot of recruiters, for example, place on them. A reason why recruiters place importance on things like years of experience is because recruiters don't understand the jobs that they're hiring for. It's not their fault. They're a recruiter. One day they're told to find an accountant. The next day they're told to find a construction worker. The day after that, they're told to find a salesperson. You know what I mean? It's like, you can't know the ins and outs of all these different roles. It's just not possible. But yet, it creates a stupid situation where they're telling you, oh, you're not as good a salesperson as them, when they know nothing about being a salesperson. You know what I mean? We all know this. Right? So these generalizations about years of experience, to me, that sounds like recruiters have been convincing you that this thing is actually more important than it really is. The only reason why it's important is if you're going through a recruiter to get a job, then you might be able to understand more how they perceive you, But in absolute terms, I think we all know that things like this, they have no bearing on how good you will perform in that role, And some individuals and some organizations, we all know this too, they intentionally want to hire less experienced people. They want to hire kids straight out of school, because one of the things that they're going to be doing to them is exploiting them, and more experienced workers will wise up pretty quickly to the fact that they're being exploited, whereas maybe a young, innocent college graduate who's never had a real career job before, they won't be able to detect it, right? The organization tells them, this is normal. This is how everyone works. These are reasonable expectations that we have of you. Meanwhile, they're treating you like an absolute slave, and it's not normal. A more experienced employee would have been able to see through their propaganda instantly, whereas less experienced one wouldn't have, right? Twinkle Star says, I think I got ghosted because they posted the job hiring again last week. Yep. Yeah, don't worry though, Twinkle Star. You probably dodged a bullet. These are all red flags. They're signs of bad employers. They're signs of things like fake jobs. They're signs of things like just an employer who's completely incompetent. None of it's good. So don't sweat it. Okay, move on to something where they actually appreciate you, and you'll be far happier. Okay, you can actually, I mean, I hate to say this, but you could actually do a little cheer that these people have passed on you if they're behaving this way, because this is like just that little line that I know of what your situation is. That's already a red flag for the company. Ziggy says, thank you, because I was arguing with someone and they said generalization or good representation, but I said experience matters and nuance matters, or like a niche. Listen, Ziggy, it's a waste of time to argue with people. Let them go on thinking this diluted thing, okay? Hey, if that's what they think, let's see how it works for them, okay? It would be an act of kindness to set them on the right path, you know? So don't feel too bad about, like, you know, maybe the fact they didn't accept your opinion or something. You know, hey, it's all good, right? No, I just think, like, arguing is a waste of time, people. If you believe me, great. If you don't, I really don't care to expend energy to try and change your mind. What you think means nothing to me. Hey, you could even be right. I'm not perfect, you know, but let's just see how it plays out. Okay, you think that? You go, and, you know, best of luck to you. You know, part of like knowing how things really work is that you don't just blab it to everyone who will listen, and you don't take it personally when people just don't automatically agree with you. Sometimes if you know how things work and everybody else doesn't, you retain that advantage. It's, you know what I mean? God knows people do that enough when it comes to things like the hidden job market, you know, because they don't want extra people competing with them in the hidden job market. Why announce this, you know, to the whole world? You know, I know a lot of people think like that. Twinkle Star says, which one is more valuable, higher education or work experience? There is no answer to that. It depends what you're trying to do. If you're trying to get a job as a professor in a university, obviously education is paramount, pretty much to the exclusion of almost everything else. If you are trying to turn around a company, and you know, I don't care how many PhDs you have to your name, but you've never turned around a company in that industry before, show me the evidence that you can actually do it. You can't. There is none, right? Experience is paramount. You know, there's a lot of people with education who think they know it all in practical terms, and they fail miserably, right? There's also people that have no education that think they know it all and also fail absolutely miserably. You know what I mean? It depends on what you're trying to do. Pramshu says, hello, I'm an international master's student trying to get a corporate communications job in a performance auto manufacturer in the US. Okay. I keep getting rejected regardless of multiple resume reworks. Now listen, Pramshu, okay, I don't know you, and I don't know what you're trying to do precisely, okay, and I don't know what the circumstances are, okay, so I could be completely wrong. But just going off my first impression of what you've written in this, like, I think it's like one long sentence? I was going to say a paragraph, but it's actually one long sentence. If you're trying to get a job as in corporate communications, right? In communications, whether that means marketing or PR, you know, like, is it the HR department or is it the marketing department? It's hard to tell. It's probably going to be, I'm assuming, communicating outside the organization, so that'd be more marketing and public relations, okay? It's not about your resume. If you're a communicator, communicate. Contact these people. Persuade them that it's, you know, worth their while to give you a shot, right? That would be the first thing that I'd be tuned into. If I do not want a communicator who is sitting by waiting their turn to be called, I would want a communicator to contact me, make a very persuasive argument that I should, give them a shot now, and have me like them, have me want to give them a shot because they're so likable and they say the right things, That's what I would want. That would be a sign of a great communicator, So I could be way off base here. I know none of the details whatsoever in your situation, but that's the first impression I got. Okay. So don't worry about like your resume. Reach out to them, talk to them, do your thing, communicate, and have it be effective communication where the outcome is they do exactly what you're wanting. They give you an interview or whatever. They consider you in a very favorable light, and they've gotten some really good vibes from you. That would be effective communication. Okay, so I'm not sure if any of that was helpful. I'm not sure if any of that applies, but you might want to start thinking in those terms also. Twinkle Star says, what happened during the second interview? Well, once again, this is a generalization, but there's two types of like sort of second interviews you can get. One type is when you're talking to a different person. Okay, so like you did an interview with a recruiter. The second interview, now you're going to do an interview. The recruiter is there, but now you're also talking to the hiring manager. Okay, so in that type of interview, it's kind of like a rehash of what the first one was. It's just that you're talking to a different person. They're probably going to cover the same type of stuff. They're going to go just as deep as they did in the first interview. You know what I mean? It's just that now there's other people involved. Okay. The other type of second interview you can get is when you're talking to the same people again, but you're going deeper. Okay, so the first interview might be some kind of a screening interview. They asked you the basics, like how much money do you need? Why do you want this job? Like that, like just gauging, like, do you actually want this job? Do you actually understand it? What are your basic communication skills? Are there any red flags? That kind of stuff, right? And if you pass that kind of first interview, the screening interview, shall we say, the second interview, that's where they're going to like go deeper. They're going to like, okay, let's try and figure out your motivations. Let's try and figure out what types of duties, you're especially suited to, or which ones you may not be suited to. Let's try and assess your level of knowledge and experience about different tasks or different duties. Let's really dive into some of your accomplishments and like, let's get a real idea of like exactly how much experience you have and exactly what your attitude towards different things are, So that's usually the second interview. They're going to want to go deeper. They're probably going to ask more behavioral type questions, just generally speaking. And in the first interview, they might have said like, do you have this? Do you have experience in this? Yes. Okay. The second interview, they'll ask more questions like, tell me about your experience in that industry. What experience did you do? In what capacity did you do this? So they'll want to go deeper. Okay, so those are some possibilities of what you can encounter. Don't sweat it. Okay, if you've prepared in sort of the standard way, certainly the way I recommend, you should be fine. Practice the answers to the standard job interview questions. Practice your answers to the behavioral questions. Rehearse them. Make sure that you know the answers backwards and forwards. Make sure you have sort of default answers that you can fall back on sometimes when you don't understand. They're probing for something really weird and you don't really know what to give them. And then just rehearse. And that's all you can do. Okay. Beyond that, it's not about like how good you are in absolute terms. It's about what they happen to be looking for. Okay. That's how we get jobs. They just happen to be looking for something you just happen to have, and the two just happen to come together. You know what I mean? It's not like how good you are in absolute terms. It's not about your value. You're the same person. You go to one company, they say, absolutely not. No, we don't think you have anything close to what it takes to do this job. You go to another company, they go, wow, you're awesome. You're hired. Here, how soon can you start? right? You haven't changed. It's the organization, it's the employer that's changed, right? So just do your best, and you're going to be fine. And sooner or later, someone will say yes. The more rehearsed you are, generally, the sooner it will happen. Oh, it's a lot of talking. Twinkle Star says, what? Okay, so I answered that. Internet Vibe says, why do managers say they will train you and compliment you to make you feel as if you got the job, but in reality, you get rejected? Well, there's a whole variety of reasons why that could be happening. One, they could be morons. Two, to be kinder to them, they may not know at that stage who they're going to select, right? If you come in for an interview and it's the first interview in that round of interviews, okay, so you're the first candidate they speak to, right? And you seem pretty good, right? Maybe a manager will say like, hey, yeah, we'll train you. And at that moment, there's no deception. You're their leading candidate for the role. They've only spoken to you, but so far you seem like you could be just fine. They honestly have no issue with hiring you at that point. Now, unbeknownst to you, if they then talk to someone else and that candidate to them seems even better for what they're looking for, then obviously they're not going to go with you. There wasn't any intentional deception. It just, they were trying to be honest and be friendly at the moment. So it could be these, or it could be anything in between. It could be like pretty, it could be pretty nefarious too, where they will intentionally deceive you because they're cowards and they don't want to tell you that, like, sorry, this is probably not going to work out. They don't want to say that. They don't want to say that to your face. So they lie, and it's that level of unprofessionalism. It's really a fine line between being polite and deceit, like deceiving people, And a lot of people don't get that balance right. And I'm being kind here, because some of them are just effing pricks, let's be honest. Amazed says, I was a finalist for this job and was so optimistic about it. The job has since been reposted at a lower title. Recruiters should at least update online application status instead of ghosting. I agree. It's very antisocial kind of treatment. It's very unprofessional. I understand why they're doing it, but they don't give a thought to the perception, like the brand or the reputation of the organization, because you're now going away from that employer thinking, God, I hate that company. Like they're generating that negative goodwill, by how they're behaving, right? Now, for some companies, they do this because they just don't care. They don't consider it important. And maybe in their business model, it actually doesn't end up really being that harmful to them. But still, it's just unbecoming. How can you put this properly, And it's very unfortunate for people that get treated like this. There's all kinds of shenanigans going on with posted jobs. The job could even have been fake from the beginning. Like, there's no way to tell, right? Or these people could have been completely incompetent. They don't know what they're wanting. They interview a bunch of people and go, nah, I don't think I want any of those, because they just don't know what they're doing. It's a waste of everyone's time. Pramshu says, it's the PR department. I've developed a good network in the industry, but I haven't had any productive results with references. Plus, companies use AI software to extensively filter out candidates. Yeah, exactly. That's how it happens in the posted job market. Now, listen. No, Pramshu. Okay, so yes, that I was talking to you before. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I still stand by what I said. Like, you're going about it, you're applying to a job through standard channels. That means you're finding a posted job online, you're applying to it with an application, you're going through the HR department's process. So, the recruiter will filter, all the applicants. You're probably going through ATS software. It probably has AI driving it. And then you do rounds of interviews with recruiters, and then maybe you meet the hiring manager, and then you get an offer, right? Like that's the standard method of getting a job, certainly a posted job, right? For the PR department, once again, I have to reiterate, like, I'd be looking for someone who has the skills to go through networking, to reach out to the hiring manager directly, or the hiring manager's boss, or their hiring manager's boss's boss. That's how I've gotten jobs. That's what I've done countless times. I've gotten all kinds of informational interviews with CEOs and people I didn't know, and I've taught students how to do this in university, and they've gone out and done it. It's really not hard if you know what to do. So for someone in the PR department, of all the people that should be tuned in to networking, it would be someone like you, right? If you work in marketing and outside sales, certainly, or a close kind of second is sort of public relations. And when you do this, it would be a good platform to demonstrate your abilities, how effective you are, Yeah, so tune into the hidden job market. Like I would have thought that you would want to do that anyway. Just learn about networking. It will open up so many doors for you, but it's especially relevant to you because this is these skills are almost your bread and butter. They're your 9 to 5 if you work in public relations. How to contact somebody, how to persuade them, right? How to have them behave in the way that you would want them to behave. So tune into that. Like if you know nothing of this and you want to learn it from me, I put it all into that course, by the way. Check out that course for everybody who's, lost with job search and you don't know what to do, or you know about applying for posted jobs, but you know nothing about the hidden job market. You don't know anything about direct outreach. You don't know anything about how to get an informational interview, or how to discover the people or the organizations that would hire you or the people within them. Like I said, I think at the beginning of this live stream, I have a video that is linked in the description box below. I'm moving the wrong arm here. Underneath this live stream, there's a description box. In the description box, I put links to a couple of resources. One is a video that I've done. It's on my channel. It's called How Successful People Get Jobs. And if you are wondering about the thing that I just said, like doing direct outreach to employers, or discovering hidden jobs and how you do it, check out that video. That should hopefully answer those questions so you get the idea, right? If you want to go the full 9 yards and get all my sort of advice and my technique of how to do all this from beginning to end, check out that course because it's all in there. There's a link in the description, and there's a frequently asked questions video about that course, so it's as transparent as possible of what you're getting and how it works. If that's of any use to you, check that out. Blaze says, is it better to just state at the beginning of an interview that I have a condition where my eyes continuously move called nystagmus? Hey, Blaze, I got nystagmus too. I don't know if you guys noticed that in these live streams. It's hard for me to keep my eyes perfectly steady. They're kind of googling around, right? I don't know if that shows up on the camera. But yeah, you know what? It makes sports hard to play if there's like a fast-moving ball or object. I wanted to play hockey as a kid. And I was athletic, in a kind of hard to believe way now, I was kind of athletically quite fit. And I could do it. It's just that I couldn't see the puck very easily because it moved so fast. And when you got nystagmus, it's hard to focus on fast-moving objects like that because your eyes are going like this, You're like the Cookie Monster, right? But if you're going to do that, at least learn to have the Cookie Monster's voice. That's all I can say. That's the person I'd want to hire. You could state that if it's like super noticeable, like everybody you meet within 5 seconds, they're going like, what's up with your eyes? Like something like that. But unless it's really that noticeable, I wouldn't say anything. I don't think you need to say anything. I think most people kind of like, okay, they have a condition, if they do notice anything, or they just don't understand what it is, but they're more focused on you as a person, rather than kind of, like doing that to you. You know what I mean? Okay. It's what you're comfortable with. I'm not an expert in those matters, but I mean, living with things like nystagmus is, it's like that. I've lived my whole life with it. Sanju says, the worst part of a job searching is not getting any interviews. Yes, it is. It can feel discouraging. If you're not getting interviews, that suggests it's the problem with your application stage, right? The purpose of an application is to simply get an interview. That's all the purpose is of a job application. Don't be thinking about like the end of the process when they make you an offer. Forget about that for now. Everything you do in the application stage is tailored for one purpose, and that's to get you an interview, okay? And the sole purpose of an interview is to get you the next interview, right? That's why when people do interviews or they do applications and they start with like, okay, just so we're clear, here's what I think about this, and I won't be doing this, and I can't take the job for less than this, and they're thinking about the end, when the company is going to make them an offer, how much they're going to pay them. That doesn't enter into it. They don't even know that they want you yet. Stop talking about stuff that happens later and probably will never even get to that stage, right? The purpose of like the first interview, if it's a multi-interview job, is to get them to want to take a closer look at you, right? And then at the second interview, when they go deeper, it's, to make them want to make you an offer, right? The purpose of the application is to want, is for them to want to give you an interview. That's all it's for, right? Okay, so no disclaimers, no concerns about stuff that would happen in the offer stage. All you're wanting them to do is to say like, yeah, let's bring this person in, They seem like they could be a contender, So that informs how you make all the little decisions necessary of how to do the application, right? Okay? They don't care about what you can bring to the role. They're not thinking about you. They've got it into their head that they're looking for some very specific things that they've decided are important. The only question is, do you have them? Oh, you've got this other thing that we didn't ask for? Don't care. Right? They look at your resume. I'm not seeing the things I said I was looking for. Next. Okay, I'm seeing some of them, but no, there's only a couple. I'm not seeing the other ones that I was looking for. Next. Right? That's how this process works, right? So tune in to using AI, things like ChatGPT and other chatbots, to help customize your applications, okay? Because if you're just sending out a generic resume or generic cover letter or a generic application, that's really hurting your chances of getting an interview. When you're going in with 700 other candidates that have applied for a job, you better have the things that they said they were looking for, and that will get you an interview, or you are more likely to get an interview. You're at least standing a chance of getting an interview, right? Does that make any sense? It's not about you. It's about them. They want this. The only thing they care about is, do you have it or not? And if you say anything other than yes, when you're going head to head with 700 other applicants, they're not going to spend any more time on you. That's just the reality. The good news, like I always say, is that remember, you don't have to play this game. There's better ways of getting a job. Okay? You don't have to play this game. You can go in the hidden job market. That's where all the jobs are. That's where the good jobs are. And you don't do any of this crap. Right? But if you're competing for a posted job, that's when you got to do this stuff. Oh, this jumped again. Good God. Okay, amazed. A hiring manager recently asked me what my first action would be if I received a 3-year financial projection. Okay. They then rolled eyes when I answered their very vague question my own way. Yeah, I was wondering, like 3-year financial projection of what? Of like your compensation? Is this about you? Or is this like part of your job as a financial manager? Or like, I don't understand what they're asking. If I received a 3-year financial projection and I didn't know what it was for, I'd probably toss it right in the trash because it doesn't concern me. You know, it's like, is this something that's important to me? Is this my job or not? You know, or is it about my own personal finances? And I would be interested. You know. Twinkle Star says, "Thank you for answering all my questions. I just had another interview yesterday with a credit union. Well, like what you said, I have to move on from the first bank I applied in." Yeah, don't worry, Twinkle Star. I mean, this is just the standard process that everyone goes through. Twinkle Star says, "Now I will start to prepare for my second interview with a credit union. Thank you for cheering me up. This job searching takes a toll on my Yeah, you're not alone, Twinkle State. It's a terrible experience for a lot of people because two things. Number one, you're at your most vulnerable and your self-confidence is at an all-time low when you're between jobs. You know, you feel like you're no good, I have no value, nobody wants me, all that kind of stuff. By the way, that's all an illusion. It's all just you reading into what the actions that are happening around you, okay? That's your interpretation of them. They couldn't be more false because you do have a lot of value and there's obviously a place for you and there's a lot of people that could use you, right? The problem is that you're just not connected to them right now, right? The people who are looking for someone like you. It's a challenge of being connected to them, right? Right now, they're looking for someone exactly like you. And right now, you're looking for an employer exactly like them, right? But both of you are just missing each other in the fog, right? You need that connection. If you each become aware of each other, then it's going to work out, right? You know, the second reason is that, you know, as if this wasn't hard enough, you often encounter a bunch of candy-ass morons that are disrespectful, rude, incompetent. It's a delightful mix of incompetence, arrogance, and disrespect, you know, that they really seem to have perfected in certain areas of recruitment and selection. I mean, I don't understand it. You know? So that really doesn't help. It's like a perfect storm of making you feel like you're not worth anything, which of course is completely untrue. It's all completely an illusion. But they do a damn good job of convincing you of that. The other factor, I think, that plays a part is that how you go about doing this stuff is really not taught in schools, I feel. You know, they'll teach you about the post-job market, kind of, and then they just leave it at that. Like, okay, so that covers 20% of the jobs, usually the crappiest 20% of the jobs. Okay, you know, what about the rest? And I mean, I think, based on my limited observations, that I think that people in education, they honestly don't know about how things work, so they can't teach kids about how things work, you know, when it comes to this stuff, right? So that's the other thing. You're not even told how this works. Like, how does one go about getting a job? And you're kind of stumbling around in the wilderness, like, what do I do? You know? It also doesn't help that, like, a lot of people talking about it are recruiters who will be happy to tell you how to get a job through a recruiter, which covers the posted jobs. But they don't mention the hidden job market where you don't have to go through a recruiter. And given the chance, most people don't go through recruiters. Why would you want to go through a recruiter when you don't have to? You know? So that all contributes to this, you know? Like, okay, I know the questions are building up, but I just want to say this. It's like, you know, when I was building my consulting business, I was doing tons of like informational interviews mainly with CEOs of people in my hometown. You know, I didn't know them. They didn't know me. I was a stranger to them. I just reached out to them on LinkedIn. You know, I discovered them and then reached out, and some of them agreed to do an informational interview with me. And some of them later became my clients. You know, and it's like, that plus other stuff I'd done with networking in the past, it's so much more positive than, dealing with recruiters and applying for jobs, because everybody talks about, when you're applying for jobs, it's a process of rejection. It feels very negative all the time, because everybody's always saying no, or they're not responding. When I was doing, the process of direct outreach to different people, it's like I got to meet a lot of executives, mainly CEOs, some board members, and overall, it was a tremendously positive experience. I mean, I was meeting with people that like I am a tiny insect compared to them when it comes to like communication skills and ability to persuade someone, And I was just in awe of some of these people, like their ability to just be extremely likable, very forthcoming. They really make you want to work for them. You're like, wow, I would love to work for you. I would love to interact with you on a daily basis. It's such a shame that I know that, we can't do this as a regular thing, So I really got to see some absolute masters of that. And it's such a positive kind of thing. So even if something doesn't work out, you're still very positive about the whole thing, and you think like, wow, maybe I'll come across their path in the future, which is something I look forward to. I mean, does that sound like job search? That's the polar opposite of job search. Usually you meet a bunch of jackass jerks that like, you don't want to see. If you never see them again, it'll be too soon, You know what I mean? So anyway, my point is that like if you are going after hidden jobs in the hidden job market, the process is also a lot more positive and a lot more encouraging. You don't have these horrible encounters with people. It's, you have some nice encounters with a lot of people. At the very least, it's neutral, but a lot of them will be positive. That's why I encourage people to learn about this and to investigate it. I'm falling very far behind. I don't know if I can even catch up here. Let's see. Internet Vibe says, someone once told me volunteering will lead to knowing more people and eventually a job. It can. You see, the thing about volunteering is that shows your true colors, right? If you do a job, right, you can't sort of say like, look, I enjoy this work as evidenced by the fact that I've been working in it. Because the thing is, they're paying you to be there, right? So you could be in it entirely for the money. You actually hate this work, but you do it because they pay you, right? With volunteering, it shows your true colors. If you're there, it's because you want to be there. Because you're either being paid nothing or you're being paid a pittance. So if you're doing it, that signals that you enjoy doing that kind of thing, right? That's the power that volunteering has, right? They're compensated in other ways. A reason why some people do volunteering for charity stuff is because, you might not be paid much, if anything, but on a regular basis, they get somebody looking them straight in the face in person saying, man, you changed my life. I am alive because of you. My kids were going to die, without medical care, but you made it possible and you helped save their lives. Thank you. Now, what's the price tag for getting that? You know what I mean? It's like, that's why some people do this. And that's why they pass up jobs where they could make a lot more money to instead work in like volunteering roles and stuff like that. I know this because I met a lot of these people and I was given a tour of a place like that employed a lot of these people, like volunteers, by an amazing CEO that I did an informational interview. She gave me a tour of the place and I met a lot of these people. And it blew my mind because these people were so much more dedicated than employees that I've had. And they were paid like practically nothing, like not a livable wage, like either nothing or just an absolute minimal thing, way below minimum wage. So, but they were so much more dedicated than workers I've had that were like making six figures, So yes, it can open up doors under certain circumstances, because it signals certain things you have, you know? If you like working with people, how many people say that in a job interview? I enjoy working with people, right? Now, it's the ones that have volunteering experience where they've actually worked with people, you know, that for like extended periods. Those are the ones you know that are actually being honest with you about it, right? You know, at least you have evidence that they're being honest. The others, maybe they're honest, but you have no evidence, right? So you tend to ignore it. Sanju says, I want your personal opinion on how to deal with depression, isolation, unemployment. Thank you. Listen, Sanju, like, look, I'm not any kind of therapist or, you know, anyone like that. I'm not qualified in any kind of mental health kind of stuff. Look, all I can say is kind of, unfortunately, kind of what I've said before, which is that, you know, this process, it leads people to conclude that, or interpret it as like, oh, I have no value, nobody wants me, I can't offer anything, you know, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. And it's all an illusion. You know, you are talented, you have a lot of value, you could do a lot of good for a lot of different employers. And out there right now, there are employers that are looking exactly for someone like you. It's just that you're not connected. Like I said 5 minutes ago, you're not connected to each other, you know? Instead, there's all these employers that are like looking for something else. They've got the idea into their heads that this is the way to go. And sometimes they're right, but sometimes they're pathetically wrong. You know what I mean? Whereas you have this thing, and there are employers out there that are looking for exactly that. It's just that you haven't connected with them. Check out that video that I put in the description box called How Successful People Get Jobs. One of the things that hopefully comes out of that for you is through the example of what I'm doing on my desktop with Google Maps and LinkedIn in that video, you can see like how many employers there are around you, like in a city. Like just the sheer number of like these employers. And then at most employers, you've got several individuals in different departments that, you know, might consider hiring you, you know? So, I mean, that shows you like just how much volume of opportunity there is out there, right? Okay, so, I mean, that may help when you realize that. Okay, but learn about the hidden job market. That'll help you, okay? That'll make you feel a bit more confident about stuff. Watch that video. That should hopefully help you provide real solutions, not just help to boost your confidence or whatever. You know, you fix the problem, you fix your mental outlook. You know what I mean? Anyway, best of luck to you, Sanju. I hope that works well. I think you will be fine. It's just a matter of time. You know. Pramshu Perry says, senior professionals don't usually accept LinkedIn invites or respond to emails. I thought I'd get their attention, so they're writing relevant articles. Are there more ideas? Incorrect. I don't know about emails. It would not surprise me to learn that they don't respond to emails, but they do accept LinkedIn invites if you know what you're doing. That's the key. Okay? I know this because I've done it. And I've taught students how to do it, and they've done it. Okay? So there's a right way to send out an invite, and then there's a wrong way to send out an invite. It depends on what you say, who it's to, and what your profile shows. Okay? So, you know, best of luck to you. Blaze says, what is your advice on becoming successful with nystagmus? How did you operate interviews in public? I don't know. I was really, it wasn't like a crippling problem for me. Like when I was like a little kid, like in primary school, I remember like people kind of, what's wrong with your eyes? You know, kind of, I remember that. But like ever since I've been an adult, I don't get people coming up and commenting on it, or it's not harming me. I mean, I can drive a car. I can do everything you would need to do to see properly. You know what I mean? So it didn't require much accommodation. It was just looks a bit weird, you know, for people that are unfamiliar with it. That's all. Prashmu says, also your networks can often link you to the application sites to ensure fair practices. Man, it's a convoluted word. Yeah, okay, whatever. Saku says, everyone asks you about your eyes. The perfect conversation starter. You can also use how people react to your eyes when they find things about them. Okay. Carlos says, how do you recommend filling out a job application if they ask for a desired salary? It's very simple. Okay. They can ask us on a paper form. They can ask us on a web form. They can ask you it in person. You answer differently in person than you answer, say, on a web form. In a web form, they often rig it so that you must answer. You can't skip the question. You have to enter a single number. You can't enter a range. You can't write words. Okay? The reason they do that is because it's an active filter. It's a go, no-go elimination filter. So if you ask for too much money, your application ends there. You're eliminated. Sometimes they put a lower limit. If you ask for too little money, they eliminate you right there on the grounds that, oh, you're not giving a serious answer, or you're just out to lunch with what would be a proper expectation. Okay. Now, because you are limited, if it's on a web form, to just giving a single number, you have to give a number. Okay. Here's what I say. Usually, at this point, you haven't discussed the job with anyone. You haven't had an interview. You haven't found out any real details about the job other than what they've written in a job posting. Okay, so the vast majority of relevant information is still undisclosed to you. You don't know. You don't know is your boss a colossal jackass? Are your coworkers insufferable? Do they require you to work holidays, weekends? Is it shift work? Is travel involved? Is remote work even a possibility or not? What benefits do you get? What amount of sick days do you get? What amount of vacation? Are there opportunities for advancement? You don't know any of this. But yet, they want you to tell them how much money you need, right? It's not a fair situation, right? So here's what you do. All those things you don't know, all those blank spaces, just let's pretend that they're all awesome. This is like a dream job. You've got tremendous opportunities for advancement. You've got 6 weeks vacation per year. You've got an additional 14 days sick days per year. You don't have to work holidays. You get every single holiday off. You don't have to work shift work. There's no travel involved. It can be 80% remote job if you want. Everything's perfect. Let's assume that everything is perfect. Now, how much money do you need to do that job? It'll probably be a low amount, right? Put that number in. Now, later, as you discover the reality of some of these variables that they haven't told you about, and the likelihood is that they will turn out to be less than the perfect situation, dream job, then you can revise your number upwards as they disclose more details of the job. Sound fair? It gets you past that initial screening, and so you don't get eliminated out of hand at the beginning, but, as you discover more, then just as they are revising their description of the job, you're revising your salary requirements for the job. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. You are not their slave. We all have free will, and we all voluntarily take jobs if they make sense for us, right? So that's the reality of what's going on there. If it's in a job interview where you don't have to just give a number, you can say other things, right? The way you approach that is, I've done a video. I've got a video that's got like 6 million views or something on it. I say it in the video, but basically, you try everything in your power not to give a number. When they ask you, you say, well, it's too soon for me to say. I don't know any of the details, right? You could try throwing the question back at them. They say, how much money do you need? It's like, well, this this position is an approved position, right? This has been approved by your management. Therefore, they must have also approved the salary range. Can I ask what it is, right? And then whatever they say, if they give you a range, you say, works fine for me. There you go. But if they really keep putting the screws to you and say, no, we're not going to tell you squat, but you have to tell us how much money you need. Like this kind of crap. First of all, you don't have to do anything that they say, right? But if you don't want to piss them off, you want, to sort of appear forthcoming, you can give a wide range. So you give, you say like, I don't know. I mean, as I said, it's very early days. I hardly know about this position. I don't know any of the details. So I would imagine somewhere between here and here would work fine, right? Now, each of those numbers, they're pushing it, but they're still within reason. Okay, so very low to very high. Both limits are still within reason, but just. Okay? And you say like, somewhere in there would be fine for me, right? And the reason you do that is because they can't eliminate you because you ask for too much. But yet it leaves the door open for you to negotiate something higher later on, right? You like these games? That's how I recommend you handle that. Okay? And if they aren't satisfied with that, say, no, you must give a number, then you say, well, I'm sorry. Look, all I can give you is that range. That's all I can say right now. So there you go. I'm sorry. That'll have to do. Everyone loves the salary question. This stupid little tap dance that, they always do. And it's so transparent, my favorite is like, when you ask them, like, how much does this job pay? And they say, well, we don't know. Yeah, here I am recruiting for a job. I have no idea how much it pays. Yeah. Like, I'll believe that, and I got a bridge to sell you. Amaze says, follow up, 3-year financial projection for a finance role. Typically there are 1,001 things I could do with the projection. It just shows how ridiculous interviewers can be. So financial projection for a finance role, like this is like a job that you would get. So like, this is like their compensation. They put it into a 3-year projection. Like if you make this much money at this time, and the time value of money means that it's worth X, is that what they're talking about? I still don't understand precisely. What do they want you to say? It's like, well, I'd consider it carefully and see if it, I do a net present value valuation on this and see if it's worth my time. I don't know. Blaze says, thank you for your advice. You're welcome. You're welcome, Blaze. Yeah. I never thought, you're the first person to ever, I think in my life, ask me about like how, living with nystagmus. What do you think? What would you say? I've never ever gotten that question before. So congratulations. You are a true original. Amaze says, do you think asking for a salary way below the undisclosed range would indicate a signal a lack of confidence and self-perception of low value? Yes, absolutely. It would also indicate that it may also indicate that you don't understand what a reasonable amount of compensation is. Right? I mean, how people perceive things is highly variable, but that's a risk you run, right? There you go. You're welcome, Carlos. Okay, we have reached the end of the chat. Whew. Thank you for being here. Hopefully this was helpful to you. I see there's 49 people here. You guys are all awesome. I wish you absolutely nothing but the best. Keep at it. If you're between jobs now, this is a demoralizing process, and in the absence of communication, everybody gets paranoid, everybody gets fearful. We start thinking that we're not worth anything. We start thinking that we have no talents or abilities and nobody wants us. That's all completely false. It's all an illusion. You're reading into the situation. That's not what's going on at all. Okay? You will be fine. It's just a matter of time. And when you get hired, this period of your life, you will forget. You will forget the stress and you will forget how it feels, and you won't think about it anymore. That's just how it goes. Thank you for being here. You guys are awesome. Check out my courses. Check out the Get Hired course if you are needing extra help and you want to get like all my advice all in one place with templates, with procedures. For myself, I think that the real point of value, source of value for that course is when I talk about the hidden job market, because in a course, I can lay it all down principle by principle, explain how things work, explain why they work that way. And therefore, when you start adding it all up and turn it into a process of what to do, it makes sense. That's something I've been unable to do in live streams or in videos because there's just too much information. It is really a monolithic thing. You can't just reduce it to little 5-minute clips and have it make sense. I tried to do that. If you go to my YouTube channel and you go to like the homepage of my YouTube channel, I have different playlists. One of the playlists is called like Tapping the Hidden Job Market. And there's like 6 videos and they're all like 2 or 3 minutes each or something. And I tried to sort of give the Cliff's Notes in video format, but if you watch that, like I did it several years ago, if you watch it, it still leaves like a ton of questions and you might understand what I'm talking about. So if you're interested in learning like sort of my recommendations for how to tap the hidden job market and how to do networking and all that kind of stuff, especially if you're an introvert or a technical person, I am both of those things. You know, you might have social anxiety, stuff like that. You know, it strongly favors using social networking to reach out to people, you know, and do the lion's share of like the heavy lifting. Okay, so it's more customized towards introverts. So check that out if any of that is kind of what you're looking for. Alternatively, I have this. That's to improve your communication skills. The stuff that I had to learn when I was becoming an executive. You have to tack on a number of things. One of them is more advanced communication skills. So I put all that stuff into a course. And if you want to learn business, business is the scientific study of how to make money, if that's useful to you. I mean, it can be in a variety of ways. It can help you be more effective at your conventional career. It can help you get promoted. It can help you become a manager sooner. You know, or it can help you be an entrepreneur, do side hustles, that kind of stuff. But, you know, whatever. If you're looking for that, check that out. All of these are linked below in the description box. And I do a live stream every Monday on side hustles, more the entrepreneurship type thing. And I've recently started doing a live stream on Friday talking about private equity and sort of like more advanced sort of corporate management concepts. So if any of that stuff appeals to you guys, check it out. I will be back on Friday with another edition of Honest HR Nitrous. If you have any more questions, come back and ask. I will see you then. Take care.